The final whistle has just gone at the MCG and wow, what have we just witnessed? Well, it was the biggest ever comeback in a Lions test match. Unbelievable. Hello amateurs, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to be here with you throughout the Lions series and beyond, so hit subscribe to follow along. How did this one start? Well, pre-game, the Wallabies were 15 minutes late due to traffic. Not a major issue, I wouldn't say. And Schmidt was talking about how the additions of Skelton and Valentini really he was more excited about their experience as opposed to their size. But their size was very much in evidence as well early in this game, in particular as Skelton carried the ball up after the second minute, and Itoje, he must have known that Skelton was on the floor just from his body position. Itoje ripped it out when Skelton was already tackled, and that was an early penalty to the Wallabies, and it just invited pressure. So the coaches talked about it afterwards. What pressure did you bring on yourselves and what pressure could you relieve? And it was a lot about that really in this game, because both attacks really, particularly in the first half, were well on top and scoring tries and gaining ground and keeping the ball every time they had it. Lions gave away another penalty soon afterwards, and that led to 3-0. Tom Liner after 4 minutes. Australia, though, were asleep at the kickoff, and the kickoffs were another big battleground today. The Lions did pretty well off kickoffs overall. This one, Russell kicked deep right, and it bounced out 5 metres out. Unbelievable. The Lions won some other turnovers at kickoff time as well, whereas the Australians tended to keep really deep to Jamison Gibson Park, who more often than not cleared very well on his own terms. So the kickoffs were an very interesting battle today. The Lions did have some attack, but it was kind of misfiring. And I would say that was the thought for most of the Lions attack actually throughout the game. There were periods when it looked really slick, but very small periods. A lot of the times the passes were just off somewhere, so the next pass couldn't come quick enough. And it's those fine margins at this top level that really make a difference. So yeah, the Lions looked a little bit clunky. They looked a little bit nervous, but the Australian defence was so physical. Like, they absolutely manned up today in a way that they absolutely didn't last week. And it continued with carry after carry. Skelton, Valentini off the back of a line out. It just looked like they were gaining ground with every opportunity. Lions tacklers were flying in. There were lots of kind of effort, but they weren't making those tackles stick, and that would be vital. Ty Burn, I tell you what, he had a bit of a mixed game today in lots of ways. He did some incredible things, especially later in the game, but he got tackled into touch after about 10 minutes when it just like I was screaming, just get inside, and he caught the ball like 3 metres from the line, from the touchline, and just allowed himself to be tackled into touch. Straight after that, Tom Curry gave a penalty away at the breakdown. Again, you have to compete. You have to be on the line. But this one, he must have known that he hadn't released the player. Good call by the referee. And that was 6-0 after 10 minutes. It was from this kickoff that the Lions won a held up kickoff turnover. There was some questioning about the laws from the Australian players there. You know, did he have a chance to play it? That's not the law when it's straight from a kickoff. You can get the guy man and ball as soon as he catches it, hold him up, and it's a turnover. The scrum came up next because I think after 14 minutes we had our first one, and it would go on to be a really pivotal battleground, I would say, particularly later in the game. But Porter absolutely melted Alan Alatoa in that first scrum, which led to a penalty after Skelton whacked High Furlong late. And this is another little interesting chat going on here. The Lions got in there to defend their man, as rightly should be the case. This has absolutely a place in rugby. It's about intimidation. It's about physicality. And if you get a little late shot in, fine. Expect the opposition to come after you. And if you don't, then, you know, you can probably get away with doing stuff like that all day. Skelton tried to pretend that it was a big stadium and he didn't hear the whistle. All of that kind of stuff. Piardi knew, obviously, that was rubbish, but gave him the benefit of the doubt. I think everything was dealt with correctly after that. The Lions, though, really should have scored from a nice little line-out move. They hit Aki up in the middle, then came back blind, hit the second man out the back, Jack Conan, who looked like he was over, but it just got whacked out of his arm in the tackle, so a knock-on. But the Lions stayed down there. It was penalty advantage, and Sheehan dived over to score the try. Very interesting one, this, according to the law. I'd noticed this in previous games. Sheehan was basically doing a quarterback sneak. He wasn't looking to drive when he took these penalties at all. He was just looking to get as close to the line as he could, then hit the ground to create a fast ruck. As such, and he did it a couple of minutes beforehand as well, the Australian tacklers were so low to the ground. So this time, Sheehan just kept her body height a little bit higher, went straight over the top of those tacklers and dived to score. There were some question marks about whether he jumped the tackle, but you're allowed to dive to score a try. And if that takes you over a tackle, it's still legal. So correctly given by the referee. Relatively easy conversion, this one, which hit the post from Finn Russell, which kept the Lions behind on the scoreboard. Interestingly, they would be behind for almost the entire game. After 20 minutes, Jones was having a little bit of a mixed game. He had some good carries, but there were some opportunities as well that maybe he could have made more of. There was a chip from Jorgensen. Jones I think he had to play the ball, and his running line was taking him into touch, and he tried to get it back inside, but it looked like a little bit of a cheap turnover that way. It was a great physical battle, though. A lot's going on. The Lions weren't really knocking the Australians back at all in the first 20 minutes, or rarely, and they were bringing a lot of pressure on themselves with the little penalties, the little lack of discipline, and the Australians were absolutely making the most of it. But it was only a one-score game. The Lions, whenever they got in within hitting distance, looked like they were going to score. What could have been a big moment shortly after, when Harry Potter went off for Tate McDermott, did not turn out to be that way. I thought McDermott did a fantastic job on the wing. The Lions never got an opportunity to really sort of put him under any kicking pressure, and he carried the ball fantastically well. So, yeah, that could have been a big moment, and maybe, if I look back on it, maybe there were some things that the Lions took advantage of, but I certainly didn't notice it at the time. The Wallabies carried on after that, just doing what they've been doing, 1-out runners off of 9. But with that extra bulk, with that extra momentum, they were making ground every single time and getting quick ball the vast majority of the time as well. They won a penalty for advantage, kick to the corner. This was a very gimme 3 points, actually, which they kicked to the corner because they were just like, come on, let's keep going after this. They went for the drive, got back into midfield, and Hugh Jones, it looked like he was lying on the floor and played the ball. Again, couldn't really see it in the replays, but that looked like a dumb penalty to me. The type that the Lions didn't need to give away, but they were because of the amount of pressure that the Wallabies were putting over them. All of that led to James Slipper getting over in the 24th minute. He did a brilliant job here of using his prop skills, his prop strength, because he kind of went to drive, got pushed to the ground, and then just extended up and over, which is a very prop movement to do. That's how you get a scrum moving forward as well. In the same play, Tommy Freeman was yellow carded for being offside, and I think this is really important in terms of refereeing. The Lions had been warned about the number of penalties. Just because the Wallabies scored doesn't mean that they shouldn't get that yellow card as well. I think that's the correct refereeing decision. But it was 11-5 at that stage, and it looked like it was only one-way traffic, really. The Wallabies were dominating almost everything. Itoje gave a penalty away from the kickoff for being off feet. That were just like really competing hard and just getting it wrong, just getting on the wrong side of it for the opening 25 minutes for the Lions. There was a massive moment shortly afterwards when Hugh Jones kicked deep. Tom Wright escaped up the left-hand touchline. He put McDermott away and he stepped back inside and kind of whacked through Conan. I thought Conan maybe looked a little bit dazed after that. And then Tom Wright appeared again on the open side to whack a 50-22. That was a huge play from the Australians, and mostly Tom Wright, who really orchestrated all of it. The Australians battered away again. Battered away. And it looked like an opponent of George Foreman. The Lions just got slower and slower in their movements around the ruck. And I screamed again. I called it. I said, they're not folding quick enough. And as soon as it happened, Gordon spotted the gap between the two refs to scoot in for a try, an 18-5. Not only did he go between the two props, he did a brilliant thing. And this is something that almost always works. He basically ran at where the referee was. The referee then has got responsibility to try and move out the way. It's not his responsibility to not block defenders. And I don't think it was Andrew Porter. I don't think Porter was probably ever going to make that tackle, but always run at a referee, guys. If you're around the fringes, it makes such a difference, and it's very difficult for the defenders to readjust and just ignore the referee. So massive momentum to Australia, and even more shortly afterwards. It's from the kickoff. Jorgensen beat 4 players deep in Coffin Corner, which is great play by him. But you have to say, like any team that's losing, getting beaten by that many defenders beaten in that small amount of space, they've done something wrong. So praise to Jorgensen for getting out of there, but the Lions were poor in defence, and that really narrowed them up. So when Australia then realised that and played through the middle, Suaalii took a massive gap. Well, sorry, it wasn't a massive gap. He stepped through a hole. Tom Curry looking a little bit leggy on the inside. I think possibly I would have liked to have seen him at least attempt a tackle there, and he didn't even sort of do that. Suaalii, though, was through the hole, 2-on-1 for right, and that was a try from the end of the world, 23-5. Relatively easy conversion, though, missed by Liner. These little things, these points here and there at the start of the game play a factor later on. And that 2 points there, which was a relatively easy one, was costly, I think. Talking about the Lions inviting pressure on themselves for a lot of the opening 20-25 minutes, the Wallabies did it, possibly for the first time after 33 minutes when Liner dropped a kick, and that gave the Lions an entry. They moved it wide. Tommy Freeman had a really big carry. He was only just back on the pitch after that yellow card. A big carry from Freeman. He did that all day, to be fair. That's what he's good at. That's what he's known for. That's probably his best skill. Skelton whacked Ty Burn when it went back the other way. And if you look at the replays, Skelton not only whacked him, he then held him by the throat on the ground as well, which is what led to the scuffle afterwards. But the Lions cared not, because Gibson Park darted back blindside to Jack Conan. Beautiful hands from him to put Tom Curry over in the corner, stepping back inside Jake Gordon for 23-10. Another misconversion, but this was difficult, wide on the right for Russell. It's all going on. Honestly, so much happened in this first half. It is unreal. The Lions got a penalty for in at the side, and Russell again went big for the touchline kick and got it really close to the lines, to the Australian line. The Lions, though, still look clunky. They still looked a little bit disorganised, but within that, they stayed really patient. They stayed composed. And although what they were doing was far from perfect and didn't really look slick at all, they managed to maintain pressure down there. Keelan got the ball off to Jones for a try. And suddenly, after looking out of it for most of the first half, it's now 23-17. And for the rest of the half, it looked like Jamison Gibson Park decided that because the Lions weren't being physical enough, he was going to do it all. He attacked everything for the rest of this half. I think he caught the kick, carried it up, box kicked himself, whacked the player, counter-rucked. He was so physical in those last few minutes before half-time. It was quite astounding, to be honest. But it was the half. The Australians tried to sort of play a little bit of 2-minute drill to get to half-time. They lost the ball. It was a little bit dramatic at the end. But what a half of rugby. 23-17. And like last week, when the Lions probably felt like they should have had a bigger lead at half-time, the Wallabies will probably feel the same. On this game as well, both attacks on top. So it's all about the pressure and the discipline. What pressure can you relieve from yourself and not bring on yourself? The Lions brought a lot on themselves in the start of this first half. And discipline, they brought pressure on themselves from penalties that they didn't have to give away. Of course, you have to compete, but they just got the balance a little bit wrong. Into the second half, and a really big moment happened before the players even ran out of the pitch, with Valentini, Alatoa and Slipper all off the pitch to be replaced. Valentini really the biggest one out of those. Although the Wallabies scrum struggled even more. They only really had the one bad scrum in the first half, but they would go on to have several more in the second, with Robertson really struggling against first Porter and then Genge. Lions exited cleanly from the kickoff. Again, Jamison Gibson Park given all the time in the world to catch the ball and get the ball away. Lowe dropped a kick, which, talking about pressure, it was a box kick from the Wallabies. It looked like a very catchable kick. Lowe dropped it, and again, that brings pressure on the Lions. But they got away with this one because Wilson was penalised at the ruck for going in at the side. This one looked a tiny bit soft for me. It was kind of on the far side of the ruck from the referee, so it maybe looked a little bit worse from where he was, but it looked a little bit soft, that one from me. But that allowed a little bit of pressure relief. Lions got the line out, and Ty Burn passed the ball to nobody, basically off the back of that line out. I've never seen him in that role before, so maybe he wasn't quite used to it. He then picked and went from a following ruck, knocked the ball on the floor. So this is what I'm saying. Ty Burn had a bit of a mixed day at times. There were definitely errors in him and things that you don't normally see, but he had some big moments as well, some huge moments in fact. And we'll talk about some of those coming up because most of them happened towards the end of the game. A good line scrum, but a great kick from Liner, which eventually Keenan did well to field and get back down the pitch. I thought he misjudged the kick initially. I would have liked him to have called it on the full if he could. Maybe it was just like the stadium and trying to judge it against all these things. Maybe it played into it. But it looked like Keenan misjudged the ball initially. But then he got back, knocked it back into the field of play and got the ball away really well. We saw a James Lowe exit kick, I think, for the first time on this tour. Like, certainly a planned one. And actually, it wasn't that great. He kind of sliced it into touch a little bit. But that was the moment when Will Skelton went off. And although some of the Wallabies that came on, Langy Gleeson in particular, was super physical and really skillful as well at the line. His passing at the line was excellent. That was a big moment, I think, because then the Lions really looked to dominate the scrum for the rest of this game. And they were getting joy. There was resets, but they couldn't quite get the penalty of that next scrum. So I think they were really planning on that because the Lions then played from deep. Jones carried, Russell got the ball from the next phase and kicked it out on the full. Just bringing pressure on yourselves, just looking for a clean exit there once the penalty wasn't given. And yeah, the Lions failed there. Bundy Aki gave a dumb penalty away shortly afterwards when he had hands on the ball on the floor in a ruck and the referee spoke to him once, twice, maybe 3 times. Bundy's still there, hands on the ball, looking at the referee. Of course, the referee is going to give a penalty. Again, a really avoidable penalty there for the Lions. Liner kicked it 26-17 and it took it to more than a score away, which is big when it gets to the final lengths of these games. The Lions tackling had changed though. And I'm going to pick out one player in particular because Mario Toji so often tackles with his chest. He so often kind of scrags and just runs into people. If you taught people to tackle like that, they'll get it wrong on a number of all the time. And Toji did get it wrong a couple of times in the first half. He suddenly changed into an actual tackler where he was hitting people with his shoulder back flat to the ground, and he whacked a few people in the sort of next couple of moments. And he actually mentioned that after the game. He mentioned about start hitting people, I think was the phrase he used, and he did it himself. He actually started hitting people rather than looking to wrap and just grab people. I'd noticed that was a big difference in the way he tackles. Australia, though, was still very, very dangerous. And they won a great aerial battle on the touchline. I would say they probably, it was close, but they probably got the balance of the aerial battles today. Jorgensen, again, got up. And then Australia were away. Some really intelligent passes to get the ball back into the midfield and away from where all the pressure was. But Tom Curry, I think, saved a probable try as he tracked back and hit Suoliti from behind, causing him to knock on. It was pretty much the last thing that Curry did as he was replaced shortly afterwards by Jack Morgan, on for a Lions Test debut, and he had some big moments as well. Porter and Chesham came off at the same time for Genge and Ryan, both of whom made huge impacts in this game. Both of whom absolutely, Ryan I'm talking about here in particular. There was lots of people saying Scott Cummins should have been picked for that role, and Cummins had played really well, no question about it, but Ryan did exactly what we expected of him. He came on and whacked people in the tackle. He came in and destroyed some rucks, but not only that, he had some big carries as well, including the one in the last minute of the game. But the Lions were winning scrum penalties. Genge going well against Robertson, who spent a lot of time on his knee in the scrum. But then after Russell's earlier bad kick, Jamison Gibson-Park, who's kicked well the entire tour, whacked one out on the full as well. He just mishit it under a bit of pressure, and again bringing pressure back onto the Lions. But the Lions did have some incredible attack in this second half in some phases. They got some really good shape where they're just playing out of the back, narrower in the Australian defence. Bundy Aki was the man to benefit as he chose the correct opportunity to go through a break almost up to the halfway. Ellis Genge was on the pitch and running really brutal carrying lines, knocking over Wallabies left, right and centre. And it was James Lowe. He had been looking for the opportunity to get that offload away for quite some time, and he sort of parried a few tacklers before getting it off to Ty Burn, who basically beat three men in a post box to finish in the corner. It was a fantastic finish from him and a really, really big try and a big moment. 20 minutes to go. Finn Russell whacked over the touchline conversion, and again, 2 points at that time in the game was huge. It's now 26-24. A penalty or a drop goal would win it for the Lions based on that scoreline. However, that 20 minutes after half time, it really felt like both teams were kind of jousting a little bit. It didn't really feel like, it was kind of like everybody took a breath after the first half, which was breathless. And they were just looking to not lose the game in that period of the game. Farrell and Kinghorn came on for Jones and Lowe. So interested tactically there, the Farrell one in particular, because, yeah, he went out there and played at 13. I don't recall him ever being out and out on the field as a 13 before. That's where he was defending. Certainly, they swapped around a little bit in attack, but he defended the 13 channel and didn't get found out, actually, which was good to see. Now, the big players come to play in the biggest moments, and Itoje won a breakdown turnover penalty and another huge kick from Finn Russell. A massive kick to land it 5 metres out. But the Lions drives and they looked like they were going to score. They were doing this brilliant thing when they get close to the line where they play the second man again and just get weak shoulders. But Carlo Tizzano, who's on for the Wallabies, won a brilliant turnover. Stewart and Kelleher came on for Furlong and Sheehan, who both played really well. Shortly afterwards, a chance for Tom Wright, who dummied on the right-hand touchline, and he was through a gap. Not sure what would have happened further down the pitch. Keenan was still there to be beaten, but it might have been a 2-on-1. However, he kicked, a kick followed, and it did allow good field position for the Wallabies in any case, which is probably the most important thing at that time of the game. James Ryan's tackles. I think he did 2 in a row straight off what the Wallabies did then. The Lions won a scrum penalty shortly afterwards. Again, Robertson on his knee, and the Lions were turning the game now. They were putting the Wallabies under pressure. The Wallabies couldn't really get any go forward through the tight exchanges, although they still looked dangerous. Lions played. Kinghorn rounded Su'Ali'i. Kinghorn looked really lively. That footballing ability he has shone through in his 20 minutes on the pitch today, and I thought he played really well. But the Lions lost a penalty. Will Stewart penalised for an extra roll on the floor. Again, it was the correct decision. But frustrating for the Lions because when they played, when they were accurate, they really damaged the Wallabies consistently. Itoje, again, big maul turnover from the penalty that was kicked to touch and the line out that followed. He got in, listened to the referee the entire time, knew that he was legal, didn't change his mind. All good. Unbelievable moment. But the scrum that followed was a huge moment because it was in a kickable position for the Lions and they got pens in recent scrums. But the first one was reset. The referee telling both Robertson and Genge one thing that they could improve each, which, I think was pretty reasonable for that one. The next one was not engaged. And then we had a little break where Will Stewart, I assume his boot had just torn to pieces, ran off and took one of Ty Furlong's boots. I don't think I've ever seen exactly that in a test match before, especially in front of what was an enormous scrum. So Stewart back on the pitch, and were the Wallabies a bit cute here? Possibly. They pre-engaged again, which gave the Lions a free kick. No opportunity to kick either for post or for the corner from that moment. Again, this was a moment where the Lions were a little bit inaccurate, just not quite flowing. The passes a little bit behind. When the pressure came on, they weren't always all that well organised. It led to a Ellis Genge knock on the floor. Bundy was cramping up all over the place, but just about seemed to be able to manage it. There was talk that Mitchell was going to come on the wing, and then who knows what would have happened. If Freeman would have probably come into centre, wouldn't he, I guess. But that never happened. The Lions continued to play and play and play, starting from well up the pitch. I think it was around about the halfway line, maybe even in their own territory. And I'm pretty sure along with most people, the commentators certainly, were thinking, just get in range of a drop goal, set up a drop goal, keep going, the chance will come for a drop goal. But with 79 minutes and seconds on the clock, after again, actually not the most fluent of play. Finn Russell took an option where he kind of went back open, saw there was basically no option for him, slipped over, got back on his feet, but managed to get the offload to James Ryan, who carried well right under the sticks. Ball was moved left to Hugo Keenan, who rounded Len Ikitau for the try, and with less than a minute left, that was the game. Or was it? Because Harry Wilson was over immediately, quickly followed by Mario Itoje to tell him to basically shut up. And they were talking about a clear out from Jack Morgan on Carla Tizzano, right under the sticks. It was the one where Ryan carried the ball up. And I saw it immediately. I was like, I think I said great clear out, because he whacked Tizzano so hard, put him back on his haunches, back over the other side of the ruck. And it was a great clear out. They correctly, I think you have to go and check that, because it's very close to a head contact. So the TMO called it in for a check. In any case, it's such a big moment, you have to check it. But I was nervous, because I think we've seen referees who have been led by the head contact protocol for a number of years now, and anything that looks like a head contact, anything that sort of could be potentially, has been penalised at times in the past. So I was a little bit nervous about which way this one might go, but I thought Piardi got it exactly right. He's got in to clear the ruck. They're two players at exactly the same height. He hasn't made head contact. It's close, but he hit him sort of on the back, really, and he has tried to wrap. So it's a completely legal clear out. Nerves over, celebrations begin. The Lions win 29-26. The conversion meant nothing. It doesn't matter. 2-0, and it was a test match for the ages. An absolute belter, and I'd be talking about it as effusively even if the Wallabies had won. It was a wonderful game, and one that we've been hoping for, that we've been waiting for. And I think a lot of us maybe thought that it was never going to come, but it did. And I'm delighted for the Lions. I'm delighted for the sport. I'm delighted for the game that we got a really big occasion like this with some amazing play and some great storylines. So that is fantastic. That's all I've got for you right now. Oh my goodness, I'm going to be back with Alco later to go into it in more depth. But let me know in the comments, what do you think? Keep it respectful, as always. That everybody on that pitch is doing the best they can in the circumstances. So please keep it respectful. But I'd love to know your thoughts. Give this video a thumbs up while you're down there. It helps other great rugby fans just like you find it. And you can subscribe there. You can watch that one next. And don't forget to get out and play.